Now, as President Bola Tinubu's administration reaches its mid-term, the state of human rights in Nigeria presents a mixed picture of progress and setbacks. On one hand, the administration has made notable strides in areas such as freedom of speech and the press. Journalists have largely been able to report without the levels of intimidation witnessed during the previous administration. While recent actions to repeal restrictive laws like the social media bill signal a shift towards supporting democratic freedoms. However, there are growing concerns over escalating security challenges, particularly in the northeast and northwest regions, where human rights abuses continue to affect millions. The administration has been under fire for its handling of insecurity, with allegations of extrajudicial killings, forced disappearances, and abuses by security forces. Now, there have also been reports of heavy-handed responses to demonstrations, including the suppression of peaceful protests over issues like fuel subsidies and insecurity. Now, human rights organizations have called for a more balanced approach to policing and protest rights.
Meanwhile, a political think tank under the aegis of Independent Media and Policy Initiative says President Bola Tinubu's economic reforms and restructuring in the past 2 years have left positive marks in domestic as well as global circles. At a press briefing in Abuja, the chairman of the institute, Niyi, Akinsiju, said an audit of global and domestic institutional ratings as well as quantification of Nigeria's ongoing economic reforms indicates that the country is being recognized as a rising economic force across the globe.
We conducted an audit of global and domestic institutional ratings and qualification of Nigeria's economic reforms, ongoing economic reforms, which outcome indicates that the country is being increasingly recognized as a rising economic force and admired across the globe for the resolve shown by its leaders in implementing difficult but necessary reforms. We are seeing more community activism in the area of securing the rural areas, and for us, that is commendable. I'm very sure the stakeholders in Nigeria are already talking about community policing, which is also a very significant component of securing the Nigerian state, as it were.
Well, to present his think tank's analysis of President Bola Tinubu's economic policies since assuming office is Dr. Niyi Akinsiju, Chairman, Independent Media and Policy Initiative. Thank you so much for joining us on Newsnight. I was trying to ensure that I pronounce it better this time around.
I appreciate you for that. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
I mean, we've heard a little from what you've done so far with your analysis. You say this is repositioning Nigeria in the global space, and that the president has done well in the last 2 years. But there are those who say that these reforms actually benefit the top end of the economy, the big institutions, the West, the foreign partners who see it as the way to go, and not the ordinary Nigerians. I mean, does your report also highlight the impact of these reforms generally, not just in the global markets?
As a matter of fact, that's where we started, because we know that a major drawdown of the Nigerian economy historically had been the fact that there was a deliberate effort to suppress prices in critical area of human consumption. And any economy that does that is at the risk of a ballooning cost of living when there's a reversal. And of course, there are also social engagements, upheaval associated to such reversal, and that is what we have now. We first commended the president for taking that stance. I think sometimes in May, when we heard that it was possible, May 2023, when we heard that it was possible that this president, was going to go along that line, we decided, of course, to form a group of think tank, veteran journalists, policy analysts, economists, and all that, to monitor how exactly he wanted to go about it, because it was a new thing. We understand the fact that most governments and administration in the past had actually shied away from this reality, knowing that this is where to go to. Fuel subsidy had become a burden for various administrations. And of course, foreign exchange rate too had also become a challenge. Who was going to bail the cat was the issue. And here comes the president who decided to take these issues head on. So in reversing those positions, you are sure that there was going to be a ballooning in the cost of living, and of course, most impacted were the urban poor, and the immediate thing would be to have this intervention and all that, palliatives. Those are interim. We welcome them. But we also know that the major route to elevating that segment of the economic population was to enhance production and productivity in a way that you start having expansion in the areas of in industry, in service sectors and all that. And that would, of course, enable an economy that creates jobs. What had been a major limitation over the years is that we earn revenue, federal revenue, we consume 70% of that, and of course we at the point in time it became a critical situation for us because we were even spending more than 100% of our revenue on debt servicing or not even repaying principals, So we needed an economy that creates jobs. That is the benchmark. And before you do that, you also need those big people you are talking about, the foreign investors, the domestic investors. And today, we are seeing that inflow. We are seeing inflow of so-called portfolio investors. We are seeing inflow of foreign direct investors. We are also seeing the activism of domestic investors, which is very important because those are the baseline for whatever foreign investors are coming to do. And if those policies were not right, we may not likely, see this resurgence of investment activities in the economic space.
Right. I mean, it's interesting you talk about that. But let me, bring up this quote from Olisa Abakoba, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, former NBA, Nigeria Bar Association president. He says, reforms will fail without restructuring. Now, 2 years of this administration, nothing really has been said about restructuring. And what Abakoba is saying, look, restructuring is an economic imperative. If economic reforms will succeed, the governance structure, has to percolate from bottom up, not top bottom. He's saying that this over-centralized, governance structure will not allow for deliverables as far as, the economy is concerned, no matter how, great these economic policies are.
Yeah, well, I also think there is a need to start identifying superficialities in some of our recommendations, in the public space, especially when we're talking about restructuring. In what context, is this restructuring? Is it in, if we say in governance context, is it as per ethnic groups? Is it as per political interests? So we need to first identify those things.
Well, his point is take governance to the, to the people.
Very good.
From the local government, councils, to the state government, instead of this situation where you have Abuja deciding, the health, even the birth and death records of people in Nigeria. Do we even have it?
Yeah. We should have it.
With this structure.
Yeah, we
so
should
his
have it.
point, his point is, if these economic policies will work, if they will work at all, we need to restructure the governance.
I agree with you.
Structure.
And I think to a large extent, that's an advocacy the president himself has been pursuing, has been advancing.
But he hasn't talked about it in 2 years.
He's talked about local government autonomy. And had actually, taken states government, to court. Right, so much that the Supreme Court had also made a ruling, enhancing and guaranteeing the access of local governments directly to their constitutionally defined funding templates. So that is where I stand with, because the truth of the matter is, you stay in a local government before you are identified as coming from a state.
Great. Okay. All right. Let me just ask you. You have said that Nigeria needs to stay this course, and that President Tinubu's economic reforms are different from past administrations because they shied away from it. But there are those who say perhaps the implementation, it was shock therapy, and it should have been done in gradual phases. I wonder if your think tank also thinks that way. And secondly, if you are staying this course, what should the administration do differently, if any, for these praises and these approvals that it is getting from the West, from the big banks and all of that, become reality for the everyday Nigerian? What do they need to do differently for it to become impact?
I think the important thing is that the government is focused.
Okay.
The fact of the matter also is that the Financial Times, what the Financial Times rounded up on their position was that the next stage, as it is, there is a stabilizing prospect in the economy. Now let us drive these policies in such a way that it will start impacting the poor people. And how do you do that? Provide food at a cheaper rate. And if you see the body of policies around the agricultural sector, you'll be overwhelmed. As at the last count, in the last 2 years, we've had close to 25 policies, in the agricultural sector. That tells me that the government is doing a lot.
But are these policies translating? That's the question.
Well, at least the major indicator of if they are translating is food prices. And of course reflected in food inflation. And we are seeing that declining.
Okay, Niyi Akinsiju is the chairman, Independent Media and Policy Initiative. Thank you very much for joining us on Newsnight.